Good evening, Moore, and welcome. Tonight we're going to be venturing into the depths of the woods because there are cabins here waiting for our arrival. I hope you're ready because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Does anyone remember outdoor ed? If you don't remember or just don't know, let me give you a brief rundown. Outdoor education, or ED for short, is a school camping trip that takes students to the woods where they can learn more about nature. My outdoor ed trip took me to the snow-covered mountains, and for the most part, it was completely boring, except for the occasional snowball fight. But then the last night happened, and I will never forget it for as long as I live. Before that night, I had no trouble sleeping, but that night something felt wrong. At first, I thought it was just homesickness. It was my first time away from my parents, you see. But then I looked at my cabin mates and counselor, and from the look on their faces, I could tell they were feeling it too. It was a tense few minutes, and then something started calling our names. It was barely more than a whisper, but we all heard it. The voice was seductive, alluring, making us want to go outside. But the small amount of common sense I had in the back of my head ordered me to stay put. Charlie, my counselor, did not feel the same way and left the cabin to investigate. We could hear him yelling from outside, "Come on guys, this isn't funny. The kids are trying to sleep." I guess he assumed it was some sort of prank. After a few minutes of silence, he rushed back inside. "There's someone out here. Stay inside." He grabbed something from his bag and left again. "Listen, this is your only warning. I'm armed, and if you intend to hurt these kids, I will shoot." There was silence, and then I heard the loudest noise I had ever heard, 2 consecutive bangs. I could hear the other counselors come outside and hear them talk. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but my counselor came back and told us that for the rest of the night, we had to stay indoors. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, as the students were boarding the buses to leave, we saw police cars on the road and police officers talking to my counselor. He described seeing something barely resembling a human, taller than 10 feet with skin so pale you could mistake it for snow. It was all he could see before he fired, and the creature ran off. Suffice it to say, I've had nightmares about it and am now forbidden from going on any more camping trips. Now that I'm a bit older and a little wiser, my best guess is that it was a Wendigo, but this was Southern California, an unusual place for such a cryptid. I starved at a boys' summer scout camp in southeast Missouri, nestled on a huge, mostly unused property surrounded by the Ozarks and the Mark Twain National Forest. Just a few minutes outside the property is a small hilltop park, converted from a retired forest ranger's fire tower. It's got wooden stairs that lead about halfway up to an enclosed platform where you can observe the landscape for a few miles. The tower was often frequented by other staffers on their nights off, and sometimes you'd run into less savory locals using it for debauchery. It was a popular place among staffers as it provided a tranquil and relaxing space to chill out away from the chaos of the camp. I had been there many times in the 2 years prior to my 3rd summer, and it was always a normal, quiet place. One Saturday evening during my 3rd year, my girlfriend at the time was visiting, and I wanted to take her to all the cool spots. After dinner and a movie, I took her to the fire tower. It wasn't super late, but it was the darkest side of twilight. When we arrived, we were the only ones there, which, while not out of the ordinary, was slightly unusual since the camps on the property shared Saturday night off, except for special weekend events we hosted once or twice a summer. Thinking nothing of it, I told my girlfriend I just wanted to sit in the truck for a minute. I had a '94 Chevy S10 with a turquoise camper shell. We rolled down the windows and enjoyed the cool evening summer breeze. Not a minute or two later, my girlfriend asked, "Hey, what's that noise?" I perked up because I hadn't noticed anything at all. Straining to listen, I heard what sounded like drum beats being produced from midair in a big ring around the car. The individual beats would sound at different distances and elevations with no discernible pattern. It sounded a lot like the drums from In the Deep in The Fellowship of the Ring. We were both sitting there, a little bewildered, when I started to scan the area for the source of the noise. I looked up and down the tower to see if anyone was stomping their feet on the wooden steps, creating an echoing noise. Nobody. I looked down at the little bench area at the bottom of the tower. Nothing. I checked the parking lot again to see if I had missed another parked vehicle on our way in. Nope, we were the only ones there. By this point, I knew something weird was going on. I rolled up the windows and locked the doors. My girlfriend was still confused, but she had never been there before, so she didn't realize how unnatural this sound was. The drum beats picked up and seemed like they were steadily closing in on the truck, progressively getting louder. The hair on my arms and neck stood up straight as I could tell the beats were actually approaching us. All of a sudden, I heard a beat right behind the camper shell window, right behind the cab of the truck. I flung myself around to see if there was anything in the bed of the truck, but I saw nothing. However, as soon as I turned over my right shoulder to look back, I exposed my back to the driver's side window, and immediately a drum beat happened just outside my window. Just remembering this gives me chills, as if whatever was making the noise was intentional and intelligent. It picked the bed first because my back was exposed and vulnerable, got me to turn around, and then it was as if it was taunting me. At this point, a sense of dread washed over me, and I felt like we needed to leave immediately or we'd be in serious danger. My fight or flight kicked in so hard I began to cry uncontrollably. Flying down the gravel road way too fast to be safe, the noise did not pursue or continue. When we got back to camp, I was so shaken I had to go straight to bed. I've been back a few times since, but nothing like this has ever happened again. I asked some other camp staff buddies if they had experienced or heard anything similar at the fire tower, but nobody had anything noteworthy to say. My ex-girlfriend still remembers that night but maintains that she never felt any fear, just curiosity about what was making that noise. If anyone has any thoughts or ideas, I'm open to hearing what you think. I went over to my boyfriend Ashton's grandparents' house. They live just outside of town in the country. His parents have a little camper out there where we go to sleep or just hang out for a day. Ashton was making the fire while I played a video game with his little sister and brother. After the fire was started, I began making s'mores for his brother and me. Ashton asked if I wanted to go to the woods with him to make a teepee. At first, I wasn't too thrilled with the idea because I just wanted to stay at the camper and make s'mores. His sister, Serenity, asked if she could come too, so I decided to join them. We started walking down a long path and then turned right into the woods. It was a hot summer day, so I was wearing shorts, a tank top, and my black Converse. Serenity and I followed Ashton down a hill to the next road, walking through the woods. He knew exactly where he was going and said it would be a great place to make a teepee because it was hidden from the road and no one would see us or the teepee. Ashton started building it while Serenity and I gathered big sticks and put them in a pile. When the teepee was made, it was about 6 o'clock. We sat inside and watched a movie on his phone. Once the movie was over, it was starting to get dark, so we decided to head back to the camper. That's when Serenity tripped over a big root, twisted her ankle, and bashed her knee on the ground. Ashton tried to help her up, but she was in too much pain to walk. Since the teepee wasn't far away, we headed back there to give Serenity a place to rest her foot. Ashton started another fire while Serenity and I watched another movie on his phone. It was around 8 o'clock when the movie ended, and the fire began to dwindle. Serenity fell asleep, and Ashton tried to wake her, but she didn't move. He didn't want to walk back because it was too dark and he didn't want to trip over something, dropping Serenity or hurting himself. We decided to sleep there for the night and walk back early in the morning, thinking the quicker we fell asleep, the quicker morning would come. We huddled up and fell asleep. We were all asleep when we suddenly heard a loud, high-pitched screech. We woke up, jumping out of our skins. I checked my phone, which was at 4%, and saw it was 3 a.m. Ashton sat up silently, looking out. I was beside him, staring at the little door he had made for the teepee. It was too dark to see anything until we heard movement outside, which then went silent again, only to return. We heard another loud screech and the sound of branches breaking. Ashton reached for his wood knife, holding it close while looking at the slightly flapping teepee flap. There was no wind, yet the flap kept moving from side to side. I hugged Serenity, terrified of what might happen next. We heard another loud screech right outside the teepee. Whoever or whatever it was screeched 5 or 6 more times before it finally stopped. After what felt like an eternity, it was nearly 6 a.m., and the sun was almost out. Serenity couldn't take it anymore and really wanted to leave. We packed up and got out of there, with Ashton carrying Serenity the rest of the way since her ankle still hurt badly. When we got back, Ashton's dad and his little brother came running to us, asking where we had been and why we didn't return. We explained what had happened and why we ended up sleeping in the woods. His dad told us we needed to leave immediately, so we all got in the car and went home. At his dad's place, he seemed shaken up. When Ashton asked what was wrong, his dad explained that when we didn't come back from the woods, he called the police. They arrived quickly, and he told them we were missing and the last place he had seen us. The officer told Ashton's dad to get inside, lock all the doors, and not come out until they returned. Confused but compliant, his dad waited inside. A few hours later, he heard loud screeching sounds coming from the woods, which continued until they stopped. At 4 a.m., the officers returned and said they hadn't found anything but explained why they told him to stay inside. A prisoner, convicted of taking people's lives, had broken out a few days prior and was still on the loose. They thought he might be hiding somewhere deep in the woods. When Ashton's dad asked about the loud screeching sound at 4 a.m., the officers seemed confused and didn't know what he was talking about. They had to leave for another call but told his dad to have a good day and that they would be back. Ashton's dad was scared by the sound he heard but didn't want us to think he was crazy. When Ashton told him we had heard the same thing and that someone was definitely outside our teepee that night, his dad was relieved we were all safe. I'm just happy nothing bad happened to us while we were out there. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed tonight's spine-chilling camping tales. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more heart-pounding horror stories soon. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, keep the campfire burning. Like and share this video and don't forget to subscribe the channel.